Okay, this is a bit of an experiment. I'm starting off on a motorcycle ride, doing the old GoPro thing, and that town that I left was called Sheffield in the Canterbury Plains, South Island, New Zealand. So this experiment is I'm just doing the video, and I'm using Ferrite to record the audio over the top. So it's not really anything more than just an experiment. The other thing that I was trying, and the purpose of the ride that I'm doing, is I'm trying to see how the motorcycle, the Triumph T100, it's a 2009 model, I'm trying to see how that goes with riding on gravel. So part of this trip is just to do some twisty-turny bits through the local mountains, and also a lot of gravel road. I want to see how the tyres hold up. They're Metzler Road Tico 1s, and they've got a slightly deeper tread, and I've been finding them pretty good in the cold and wet in the winter time. On the open road, the type of road that we have here that you can see, they pick up a lot of heat, and I have to adjust the pressure. So we'll see how that goes. Now, what we're doing here is we're going up to a place called Arthur's Pass, and that goes through to the west coast of the South Island of New Zealand, but we're just going the other side of these mountains here. Kauai River, that's a main river that comes down into Canterbury, and we just turn left around the corner here. And we've got a ski field entrance not too far from here. There's a couple of ski fields around the area. What you can see here is it's late autumn time, so the trees are starting to turn. It's not quite getting cold, although I think on this particular day it was 13 degrees. Now, further on round the corner of the other side of this hill, there is actually, as mentioned here, Porter's Pass ski field. There's some native birds here and some also native plants, and there's a walkway up the top of that hill that I want to do some hiking on one day. And we just stopped here and had a cup of coffee and sandwiches and bits and pieces, and a lot of people do hiking in this area. So you can see the brown grass. Now, after Christmas time, or just before Christmas time, peak summer, we get a lot of UV, and it sort of like dries out the grass, and you get it go brown like this. And so pretty much all of Canterbury goes like this, and it'll stay like this right the way through to almost the end of the winter time. Then it'll go nice and green in the spring period for a while. But this is typical high country New Zealand, and we're just doing a loop back to the little turn off bit here and the start of the gravel road. So this is where the beginning of the experiment starts. And I'm doing about 40-50 kilometers an hour, 50, maybe even 50-60. It's hard compacted ground, and you'll see, if you look carefully, you'll see a lot of ripples with the four-wheel drives tear it up. Now, you get a lot of four-wheel drives along here because it actually joins a couple of fishing lakes, a whole ton of sheep stations, farms, and another main road together. So it's kind of like one of those back passes. But it was relatively comfortable on the gravel here, and I'll from time to time I'll chip in and see if you can play the engine noise. Again, there's good fishing and good hiking around here in fishing season, that is. fishing season sort of like goes from September through to March, which is our summer period. Again, the bike was running quite well, but what happens is when I hit these ripples, the rather tight suspension, it's not a dirt bike, the tight suspension causes the wheel to bounce off the top, and Triumph suspension, we've got up and down, so there's no rebound damping and all of the other bits and pieces you would typically have. So what happens is the engine stutters and I kind of lose drive, so there's only a certain speed that you can actually go, and you'll see that happening on the corner here. I'm just suddenly slowed down, and what's happened is that the gravel that I'm on is got deeper, and so the front wheel hits it, and then you just hear the engine noise drop, and I just lose drive, so I have to whack it down a couple of gears, which I'm quite lazy to do, and then just keep it going. So it's not too bad, and I've added this section here as well. You can see again the ripples, and then you see me lose power or lose drive, and then down, I think, towards this corner there's a little bit of a deep bit, so I hit the corner and then all of a sudden the bike comes to a slow down, and there's a little bit of camber on some of these corners. I'm not quite sure you can see it. I've tried to show a few of them. What happens with the camber is that the back end of the bike, which is relatively heavy, will just slide to the side of the road. So you kind of really have to keep the wheel pointed at the right direction and just keep the power on. And just literally, there's a couple of places where I was driving the bike at maybe about 15 kilometers an hour, but at a 15-20 degree angle to the road, simply because the back was sliding around. Colleague is riding on a KLR 650 with the off-road tyres and long travel suspension, and I was trying to follow in his tracks, and so he was having no such problems with gravel and things like that, and of course his bike is set up for that, so you can see a bit of a difference. But there's a lot of New Zealand roads that are like this, and of course on the Triumph, when I'm doing motorcycle camping, this is what I want to explore, and obviously I'm not a dirt bike person, so there's a little bit of technique that I'm trying to learn here. I moved the handlebars back a little bit, an inch back and a little bit up, just to pull my body back into the centre of gravity on the bike. That set the balance up nicely for the road, and but it's not the same balance you do off-road, and it's not so hard to stand up on the or too easy to stand up on the pegs on the Triumph as it would be a dirt bike. So you do lift yourself off the seat from time to time, but it's not the type of bike that you do that all day long. But all in all, it's going quite well. Average speed, I think, was 55 kilometres an hour over the whole journey. So that's 30 mile an hour in old money. So I was quite happy with that on the distance we've got to go. This is a lot of sheep around here. Earlier on in the year, and they would have been brought down to lower levels. We also, coming into heavy rain season, we get a few weeks where we get days of really, really heavy rain and flooding and that, so we're just before that. You can see the bike slow down again here, and I'm just moving around. And here I just, rather than show a lot of driving on a gravel road, I sped it up. Actually, it looks quite interesting. It kind of reminds me of a rally car type thing, but I just cut a little bit out and things just to show a bit of the scenery that we get to drive around. Now in the winter time, probably late winter, so August or so, there'll be snow on the ground around here, because I think we're about 200-300 meters above sea level, and in the winter time in mid Canterbury we'll get snow down to around 300 meters, occasionally lower, but that's a general thing. So there's a little bunch of houses here, and there's actually a little holiday camp that you can come and stop in, and this is just before the lake. So it's Lake Coleridge, which is one of the I wouldn't say bigger lakes, but it's one of the main fishing lakes in Canterbury, in the South Island of New Zealand. There is salmon, I believe, and also brown and rainbow trout. Not sure about the brown trout, but certainly trout and salmon. I believe salmon season is open much of the year. I'm not quite sure. This is a high country lake, so they're often open quite a long time round. So you do see a lot of fisher people. And while we were down at the lake, there were a few people with their fly rods out having a look. As you can see, the old winter feed is stacked up. And now this little bit of gravel road, I put it in here, is really deep gravel, and the bike was squirreling around all over the place. So it was more of the front, where the front tire was digging in, and I suspect I should have just dropped down and sat back on the bike or something like that. And you see what happened here, it just came to a stop, and the front tire just dug in, and so I had to sort of like stick my feet out to the side and give it a bit of welly. But in general, it made it through, and the tire didn't show any wear when I stopped. So this is the lake, and there's some on the left hand side, I believe there's some batches, and on the right hand side there's a walking track down the side of the lake a bit, so that the fisher people use. And the river that we've been following in and out, that comes into the lake at this end in a canal, and so you can wade across it. It's only about 6 inches deep at this stage, but we just stopped at the side, and it was a cup of tea and sandwiches and lunch, and enjoy the day out. So in the video I've tried to mark some of the points of interest and the heights of the mountains and that kind of thing. So it's good hiking terrain as well. Most of this is farmland or private land, so you can't just wander anywhere. There are marked trails around on the topographical maps, and if you do want to walk off them, then you've got to get permission from the owners. So there's a whole bunch of rules and regulations and things, but they're there for a reason. And then I'm going back here, and I stuck this in because I hit this ditch. I don't think I've put it in the video. I think I cut it out actually, but the gravel was on the other side when I was driving down. The gravel was relatively deep, and then I hit this ditch and the bike just sunk. So it was quite funny. But going back over the little, that's the canal that goes down to the lake, and this is back through the village the other way. And this is just give people a look at a rural village and the types of houses that we have out in the country, and what it looks like. So a lot of these trees aren't native trees; they've been planted, and this actually area many years ago used to be quite built up, but it's just now rural property. But it's kind of like typical South Island scenery. and I kind of like this time of year because the trees are turning, so you get the different colours and everything. In the springtime those trees will be full of green leaves and you won't be able to see as much because it's all covered up and everything. So the pine trees there are usually planted for shelter. That's why they're left there. They're not plantation pines. And then here, just going up the road, this is quite a steep slope going up, and the bike kind of likes going uphill. You can see the juddering. If you look in the bottom left hand corner, you can see the windshield of the bike, screen of the bike, just vibrating there, and it gives you an idea. This little mountain kind of just, it's only a little peak, but it just kind of reminded me of Mount Doom from Lord of the Rings. And in actual, from memory, I think Palanor Fields in the movie, in the Peter Jackson movie, I think is probably about 5 kilometres or 10 kilometres over the hill to the right there. So it's the same type of ground. And again, now I'm going downhill, so I've slowed down a little bit. It's more, there's no reason. What I actually do found that I can drop it down a gear and just use the engine braking a little bit to get some control, which works quite well. And then I think around here there was a little patch of gravel and a little bit of traction issue, but I just liked the video here where I just come around the corner of these trees and then it just like opened up into the plain, and there's a little river valley that it goes around the side of that small hill. And so all in Canterbury Plains, yes, just letting the truck go by, or the ute as we call it in this country, and then away I go. So what I was about to say is that Canterbury Plains, all the rivers are braided rivers and they're full of shingles. So many years ago there were glaciers, and a lot of these hills are rounded off and everything from glacial formations, and that pushes the shingle down into the Canterbury Plains, which is, I'm told, how they were formed. We get that gravel and everything comes down and sometimes fills up the rivers, cause a little bit of flooding from time to time. Not too much, but it's standard river thing. And that slowdown you just saw me do is where I hit a patch of deep shingle, and I think there's another one as well. So wherever you see the bike just come to a grinding halt, it's not that I'm shutting the throttle or anything like that. Well, probably am, but it's more to do with the fact that I'm hitting deeper than normal gravel. So the bike doesn't go over the top of the gravel, it tends to try and push its way through it. And then here we're back onto the main road again, and so this is the river, the valley that was in front is kind of a main one going down into Canterbury, and this is just the view driving due east back towards the east coast, and then back up to Christchurch as the city we left for the day. So a relatively simple but interesting ride, and the bike did really well. A little bit of dirt, dust, and needed a bit of a clean when I got back, but nothing untowards.